how you see things shaping up for 2018. I know you've referred to it as the year of alchemical transformation. What do you mean by that?
Okay. How long do we have to talk here?
I've got as long as you've got.
Okay. Very good. Wow. I think 2018 is going to be a very intense year of deep transformation on very, very many levels. And I don't know how much astrology I should bring into the talk. If your listeners are familiar with astrology, probably not.
Some will be, some won't be, right?
Okay. But if we just consider all of the astrological aspects that are, coming in and coming through for 2018, we also have to put it in context for the 2017 and even beyond, because we're going through a very fundamental reorientation, I would say. This is why we're calling it the new paradigm. And the astrology that I work with, evolutionary astrology, really looks at this time period that we are right in the crux of the fall of the patriarchy. And the patriarchy has been in place. This is a male-dominated socio-cultural, religious environment that all souls have incarnated into for the last 6,500 years. So that is a big change. And it doesn't happen in 1 year. We can't just say, oh, by the end of 2018, we're going to be in a new paradigm. But this 2018 is part of, I would say, at least a very pivotal 5-year period. Yeah, even 6. I would say from 2017 to 2024. Okay, is even 7 years. It's a big transitional time period here. So we're kind of going now into the birth canal. We're kind of going now into the tunnel, and it's stirring up, all of our gender issues, our sexual issues, what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, how to manage our sexuality, how to manage our relationships. And of course, involved with that, if we look at the astrology, we have Jupiter moving through the sign of Scorpio. And Scorpio is part of this axis of Taurus and Scorpio, which is not only the sexuality, but power in general. Okay, and so this has to do with financial power, money. It has to do with influence, fame and fortune, and politics and leaders and Hollywood movie stars. Okay, so it has to do with sexual, emotional, financial, intellectual. Okay, I mean, there are just like so many expressions of personal power, and how each and every one of us uses our power for our own personal pleasure, our own personal self-advancement, how much we exploit or manipulate, or, I mean, really, just, how honest. Jupiter has to do with honesty and with truth and with natural law. So moving through Scorpio, it's there now. It's there until October of 2018. And this is an expansion. Jupiter, Zeus, in astrology has to do with expansion of consciousness. And when it's moving through the sign of Scorpio, it has to do with us, each and every one of us, and collectively expanding our consciousness around these issues of money, power, and sexuality, which have all since the beginning of time pretty much gone together. You know, and so I kind of coined the phrase of 2018 as being alchemical transformation through death and resurrection. Because Scorpio also is Pluto, Scorpio, the 8th house in astrology. It has to do with the end, death. It's the house of death and the sign of death. And I will say that in astrology, there is no such thing as death. There is a transformation from one state of existence into another state of existence. The banana peel goes to the compost pile, goes back into the garden, and becomes a beet. Whatever, spring dies and summer is born. I mean, it's all cycles.
So you're saying earlier that you say it's happening on many levels. It will be happening in transformation on many levels. So what are those levels that you're referring to? I mean, the way sex, power, and money refers to a specific level. It's a level that it's within the story itself. And I imagine evolutionary astrology is the view of looking at the story without being in the middle of it to some degree. Is that the levels you're talking about? Or are you talking about, maybe you could describe just the levels that you mean?
Okay, I am discussing, I would say in a social context. Okay, we can already see the beginnings, okay, of all of the Hollywood movie stars, thrown across the newspaper pages as exploiting women. Okay, I just posted on Facebook a speech by Oprah Winfrey when she won her award, okay, of this whole, it's the empowering of the feminine, of women, okay, standing up, speaking up, okay, really coming forward in many realms, political, okay, financial, I think in every which way, shape, and form, we're going to be seeing, okay, very powerful, influential, rich men in positions and holding positions of power, being challenged, being confronted, being called, on their actions, on their past, and this creating a ripple effect on many, many, many different levels. Now, I have to talk, also in a social way, I see the planet Uranus is moving into Taurus for 7 years, okay, beginning this next April. And Taurus is physical, financial survival. And Uranus is sudden, unpredictable, radical change, forcing individuality, creative genius to come up with new ways. And by the end of this 7-year period, the planet Pluto that goes around every 248 years will be moving into the sign of Aquarius in 23-24. And so this is all about this coming of the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is about a society based on a level playing field. And if we look at the end of the patriarchy, we're looking at more the end of hierarchy and hierarchical forms of management and government, and more of a grassroots people organization like Bernie Sanders or something, if we look at American politics. But, even all the way across the board, what I'm sensing is, and then when it comes to money, I'm thinking of cryptocurrency. I'm thinking of people going outside the banking institutions, of people going outside these social, governmental, even religious, okay, institutions that have been, trickled down, from the top down as a need to know basis, and coming into a place where everybody knows everyone is empowered. Everybody has equal opportunity. I mean, what we're seeing here really is some of the seeds of this was sown in the 60s. And now, okay, 50 years later, okay, 60 years later, guess what? We're in for another social, sexual, financial, governmental revolution. And it may not happen in the same form or visibility or that it did in the 60s. Other things can happen because, of course, Taurus is also representative of Gaia, Mother Earth. And 7 years of Uranus moving through Taurus is also unpredictable Earth events, unpredictable physical changes that can, of course, affect whole economies. There's nothing like a few natural disasters to break the bank. Not that I don't want to be predicting anything like this. I do say that in the astrology that I work with, the weather is a reflection of the collective global consciousness. And if we as a species can expand our consciousness, raise our consciousness, open our heart space, open our ability to accept unity in diversity, this will mitigate so many of what I could see on the horizon as more hurricanes, okay, and more volcanoes and more tidal waves and more kinds of economic disasters that are kind of like it's like spirit just giving us a whack with a 4x4 across the head, like wake up.
But to wake up, that's an individual exercise, is it not? In other words, does it not need to be a diverse community of individuals creating the collective, as opposed to, for instance, so that's why I'm curious about when you're talking about all these outer manifestations, whether it be the banking system or the institutions that are all crumbling. It actually seems to be forcing the individual to go within to find their security and their stability and their sense of their point of reference. So in the context of that, what does all this mean for the person that's more focused, not necessarily intertwined in the story, but intertwined in their personal way of their personal revelation to free themselves from that?
Well, that's what I'm all about.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to
I mean, I teach Kundalini Yoga. I have, Kundalini Yoga videos available on my website, free downloads of PDFs, of meditations, of breath work, there is this whole awakening, that is all, I mean, it's all simultaneously occurring.
Right.
Okay.
Dimensional, right?
Yes, and I mean, with evolutionary astrology, we do talk about the evolutionary stages, where we have 3/4 of the world's population is in the consensus stage, learning from external authority figures and voting and doing all this kind of thing. And then, many lifetimes in that stage leads to the individuated, which is Uranian, rebelling, revolutionizing, becoming my own authority, getting in touch with my own creative capacity, getting in touch with my unique original expression of who and what I am. And then even beyond that, going outside the mind and the intellect and the genius is the spiritual. Yeah, 5% of the world's population is in the spiritual stage, which is the heart. And this is the even greater magnetic field, with the heart than there is with the brain. And so this is, and so I don't see 100% of Earth's population, okay, just having this, revelation happening over these next few years, like we're speaking about. But I also feel that as you move through these stages, as you expand, each and every single one of us that does our personal spiritual work and has a spiritual practice, I feel is doing the work for the collective unconscious. That is, that we are as each one of us balances the masculine and feminine within our own psychic structure and soul nature. We are, that goes out. It's like there is a connection between our own personal inner work and the bringing about of this new, it's not like the stars or the planets or, Yahweh, Jehovah, Mohammed, Jesus, or anybody is doing this. This is a human, a human evolutionary, movement. It's for me, I feel like we are, as a species, evolving and redefining ourselves, and just what kind of a planet and what kind of a society and what kind of a, loving, intimate relationships we want to create. This is the North Node of the Moon is in the sign of Leo, all of 2018. And this has to do with creating, becoming an agent of life, and really, being a proponent, being prolific, right? Being, like really being a channel of this beautiful, spiritual, loving, healing energy amidst, in the face of, all of the greater collective traumas. So many of the people, I'm sure, watching your program, have incarnated as healers. And you can use any form of art as therapy. Dance therapy, color therapy, sound therapy, massage therapy, and to take any form, yes, and this movement and helping people through these intense external changes, to maintain their core values, their core sense of self, to stop relying on external forms and structures and incomes for a sense of security and identity, but to find that security within their own soul spiritual nature. It's like people are going to need therapy. People are going to be needing help, financial, there's life coaching, there's psychotherapy, there's, astrology, there's just all kinds of, and it is because, and of course, astrology and all of these services are exploding.
Right.
Because so many people are doubting, questioning, seeking, and looking for answers outside the box, outside the establishment, outside of the authorities that they can no longer trust, that they no longer believe, that they, so it's like all of this, I feel all of this instability is actually, I hate to say it, it can be painful, but it's a good thing, because it's pushing people to look for answers where otherwise, they would just go to the doctor would give them a pharmaceutical, and they would just go more to sleep, get their hamburgers and hot dogs and have their diet and their nutrition go down the drain and become more dull and desensitized and ignorant and just, it's just like, I feel in some ways there is a little bit of a split in the road here. There is going to be the people that, like I say, are reaching out and are like seeing, oh, wow, this is like, I got to get my act together here. And there are still going to be some folks that are following.
Well, isn't that in a way that's what Saturn represents what's going on right now is that Saturn kind of exposes your vulnerability to your core and forces some kind of, forces that person through that effect to create some kind of stability within themselves. So is that what you're suggesting? Maybe that some people will use that vulnerability to either dig their heels in, and some people have to use it to actually examine themselves with a new sense of ruthlessness, a new sense of honesty.
Yes. I mean, that's great that you're talking about Saturn. I just started a 2-month course on Saturn because it just returned after 28 years to its home sign of Capricorn. And it's going to stay in the sign of Capricorn for 2.5 years. And the Capricorn Cancer axis in astrology is security axis. Capricorn is Earth, it's physical, financial security, and Cancer is emotional, family security. So now Saturn is the planet of consequences, of boundaries, of commitment. I call it the Lord of Karma. Okay, it's very third dimensional. So it's very Newtonian. Okay, every action creates an equal and opposite reaction. So this is kind of a coming home. And whenever a planet returns to its own sign that it rules, it becomes that much stronger, more comfortable. So these next 2.5 years, okay, and of course beginning, I mean, it's already begun. If you can't feel it, you got to be really sleeping, it's time. It's time to take the last 2.5 years of Saturn moving through Sagittarius, and Saturn is form and structure. And when it transits, it reforms and restructures. The last 2.5 years moving through Sagittarius was a time of reforming and restructuring new belief systems, new awareness of natural law, coming to be honest with ourselves, honest with our neighbors, and really come into a place of truth. Now, the next 2.5 years is going to be walking that truth. Earth is tangible, real effects, businesses, bottom line, are we operating in the black or the red? It's like, it's where the rubber hits the road, and it's where those who have learned, their truth and express their truth can really step into true authority. Saturn as Kronos, the Lord of Time, has to do with maturity, because we all mature through time. I look at Saturn really as graduation. It's just like, what? You are now old enough, to do your duty, to be responsible, to have healthy boundaries, to really become an elder, a keeper of the wisdom records. And so this will also be a time over the next 2.5 years, I would say, of the establishment of supportive institutions, maybe cooperatives, I prefer, over institutions. This is some, just my own personal, I would prefer community and cooperative, over the old, like,
Well, the Aquarian perspective of the same, or the subtle difference of Aquarius as opposed to a Capricorn perspective of community, is it not?
Yeah, I look at the difference maybe between ceremony and ritual. Ritual is something, okay, we do it this way, we've done it this way for thousands of years, and we will always do it this way. And ceremony, on the other hand, is something that, we create in the moment. We put our hearts and heads together, and we would like to put this here and put that there and sing this song and move this dance or whatever. So it's like there's a difference then also, I think, like between something that is dogmatically doctrine institutionalized versus this cooperative community input that is really, more spontaneous and fitting for the environment, the celestial and earthly and people involved energy happening at any given time.
So when you know that 3/4 of the population perhaps are not at that stage of evolution, and evolutionary astrology wouldn't necessarily, that they would relate more to traditional astrology as opposed to evolutionary astrology. They're still going through the workings of the story to become aware of their selves. Geez, I'm not even sure where I'm going with that. But what I kind of wanted to focus on was those groups of people that are individuated, and the hero's journey from Aries to Pisces, right? That's the possibility that astrology presents for a human being. Is that correct? Yes,
and that does relate exactly to what I was talking about, because I really see, the group of folks, coming of age, after that 42 midlife transition, you kind of step up, and then at 51, your Chiron return makes you, more of an elder, and then around 56, 7, 8, and you have your Saturn return, you become the elder. What I'm seeing is that these are seed people. And so there are new cooperatives, new communities, new teachings around permaculture, around living in harmony, with communities, with Mother Earth, creating cryptocurrency where, we can exchange, even financially, without, big brothers sucking away, whatever, just amongst ourselves. I think that this is a tremendous time of innovation and invention where new authorities, new elders will step forward. And this 3/4 of the population will have greater choices to choose from. I can follow Bill Gates or Donald Trump, or I can follow Randall in Old World, or I can follow, it's I see that there's just a momentum occurring, where, wow, this is all kind of coming to me now, but it's like, it's interesting that, wow, okay. How do I put this? We go through, people are under all this stress and strain and tension. And like I said before, they need therapy. They need healers. So where's the money going? The money is going to art therapy, to dance therapy, to music therapy, to even medicine or ayahuasca or the shamans. Or the money is like actually being pulled in a way, out of the system towards alternative healing therapies, which is in the pockets of alternative thinking people and alternative acting healers. And that's where we want the money to go, man. And so then it's like, okay, oh boy, like all of a sudden, there's these, broke hippies that have been on the sidelines for so long, and now having opportunities to be heard, be helpful, to offer their services and be paid, adequately, and this brings a whole new, what can I say, validation to what was once alternative, parapsychology, okay, and the woo-woo, wah-wah, even astrology or whatever. It's just like, guess what, Uncle Sam? You know, there's power over here. There's a shifting and a moving, even of financial, not just consciousness. Not just consciousness. I love it. You know, but, you know, the earthly Capricorn, Saturn, bottom line financial, it's like, yes, you know, this alternative healing center is going to make it.
Right. So you're a fan of The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, the series?
It's one of my favorites.
Everybody who's kind of, yeah, it's brilliant. So one of the things that's kind of interesting about that film and the later is the architect. Remember when Neo meets the architect and that there's just cycles of the same thing, and that although they think that they're doing something, they're really doing the same thing. It's just an elevated version of the same thing. So
Yeah.
in the 60s, the 60s hippies became stockbrokers in the 80s or whatever it was. You know, the whole concept that these people became part of a new establishment. What's going on now, it's like almost like, from what I see, is that a lot of people, these people who are promoting light and love, are not seeing, are judging like a Trump, are judging what's going on from the point of view that they're right and someone else is wrong, as opposed to that we're all just mythological figures playing out a mythology of awareness on this planet. How do you teach that? Like, in other words, it's like what's the point of creating new alternatives for energy when we're just still the same flawed being using that energy? So how do you take the focus down to that whatever percentage that you were talking about earlier that needs to really go within and clean that first before they can trust a perspective of what they're judging the world with? Do you know what I mean by that? I mean,
well, I mean, to me, you know, that all boils down to love. Love. Understanding what love is. Being motivated by, with, and through love. Having love as the bottom line. Not profit and power and pleasure and success, and in whatever way we define it. And this is where I really feel the alchemical transformation happens. This is where the death and the resurrection happens. It's in our most intimate personal lives, our most intimate personal relationships, our most, you know, our inner ability to be honest and truthful with ourselves, which is with our shadows. And this is a lot of what can be happening with the light workers movement, you know, is big shadow. And like you're saying, yes, there can be the misuse and abuse of, you know, everything you buy in, I mean, just in different ways and different forms. You can have just as many crooked gurus as you have crooked politicians. You know, I mean, so it's, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's, you know, and this is where I think it really boils down to each one of our own, you know, individual, personal, spiritual practice and, you know, and self-reflection. Saturn is reflection. And they even call reflection depression, because it takes you out of the system, out of work. You stay home and ponder and meditate and really reflect on yourself. And this is something that, you know, it's hard to do when you're under so much pressure, economic and otherwise, to take time out. Because, you know, for me, it's like, you know, we have to love ourselves. We have to accept ourselves. We have to forgive ourselves. We have to have compassion for ourselves before we can really make our intimate one-on-one relationships work, and then before we can make community work. It's like, you know, just having one relationship is a huge amount of work. When you get into community, multiply that 1 by 50, it's like, oh my So, I think that, it comes back home. It comes back home to each and every single one of us, taking every opportunity, every relationship, every, interview or email or Facebook exchange, to like really see ourselves and see our deepest underlying motivations. Are we being motivated by greed, power, lust, whatever, or the virtues? I know there's 7 of them. I don't know them by heart though. But you know what I'm saying? That's what I think changes that underlying, yes, there'll be a lot of surface changes with, economies and governments and, who's popular and fashion and whatever. But this underlying evolution of the human nature and the human being, I mean, let's face it, man, it's a long-term process. I mean, we've all had hundreds of incarnations on this planet, and we are only at the very threshold of a 2,000-year age of Aquarius. So we are infantile. Like I say, this is the birth. The birth of this age of Aquarius is basically like we're just coming out into, just being exposed to vaster, wider, broader understandings and interpretations of not only the cosmos and science, but of what it means to be a human being. I think the very definition of human is now undergoing a shift, and Webster is going to have to keep up with because we have this transgender movement coming more and more, this whole blending into androgyny. Okay, there's we can see these kids now being born. Pluto moving through the sign of Capricorn from 2008 to 2023-24, it indicates a whole soul group incarnating, having recently had a gender switch. So we have a whole lot of past life women coming in as men, and a whole lot of past life men coming in as women, and they're coming into this whole dynamic shift as this whole patriarchy and this male domination comes down, and the feminine empowerment, reemerges and comes up. And I'm not just talking men and women, of course. In astrology, we all have a Venus and a Mars, an anima and an animus. Okay, we all have a masculine and feminine within ourselves. So again, this has to do with our inner understanding. We can boil it down to a few keywords. The feminine is connection, and the masculine is freedom. How do we reconcile? How do we balance our need for freedom with our need for connection, right? I mean, in a way, they can be seen as opposites. When you're connected, you're not free. And when you're free, you're not connected. But we want both. We are both.
So it's like reconciling dialectics. And that's thus the yin and yang symbol within a circle, right? I mean, it's...
And the I Ching says the masculine is creative and the feminine is receptive. We have plus and minus, black and white, night and day, chaos and order. That's another one that I've really been playing with.
That's what I was going to mention.
The feminine is freaking chaos, man. And I'm just dealing now with Apophis, which is this asteroid of this great serpent, and really dealing with the dark. In astrology, the feminine is earth and water, and it's heavy, dark, it's the lower chakras. It's our earth, it's our kundalini, okay, force, it's our red energy, the chi energy, boom, it's, you know, and it's always changing, shifting, moving, like a river, or like the surf of the ocean. It's always moving according to the now. So the feminine is in the now. And in astrology, the masculine is fire and air. And fire and air, okay, is really coming more and more into order, clarity, light, structure, predictability. Yeah. So, you know, there is also then, you know, as you can see with every season, every year, you know, the tree grows up and then it dies and the leaves fall and turn into mulch and give birth. So that dying process, that disintegration, okay, this is Pluto and Scorpio. This is annihilation and demolition of order and structure, that the phoenix may rise from the ashes, that a new future, you know, it's the snake shedding its skin. So there is this time period in 2018, we'll say, Jupiter through Scorpio says, the more you can let go, the more you can die, the more you can go to your demons and go to your shadows and just really remove old conditioning from childhood, previous lives, family, society, whatever. Let go in so many ways, we could say, and call it the ego. Yeah, because Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, this is the birth of individual egoic expression. And Scorpio is the death of ego, leading to Sagittarius, transpersonal expression and consciousness. So we are, with this Jupiter moving through Scorpio, by next October, Jupiter is going to go into Sagittarius, its own home. And the more that we can now go into therapy and do our shamanic work and do our alchemical, sexual, dying and rebirthing and exploring and investigating and researching, the more we will be able to expand and understand as Jupiter moves into Sagittarius next year.
In a way, you mentioned death, it represents death, but I guess death and transformation are like ritual and ceremony. Death would be like ritual. It's looking at it from the point of view of a yes, exactly, which it really isn't. There's no, like you say, there's no such thing. So in a way, the transformation of ego. So ego is part of the hero's journey. Say, do you have to go through this contractive order to get to chaos? And it's that little fine line of maintaining both the control and the abandon to maintain awareness within those two dialectics. Did I say that well?
Absolutely. I mean, like I've said, I hate to keep on repeating myself, but I love the Men in Black.
Right.
That's another one of my favorite movies. And the best part about it that I see is where the guy, they open up his head and there's this little guy in there at the controls running the body. Yeah. I mean, to me, that's just like the perfect personification of the ego. It is a necessary functional element of life in an animal body on planet Earth. So we need it. It keeps us alive.
Right? And it evolved. Is that correct?
And it evolves, yes. You know, it's all of our survival mechanisms. But the thing is that it functions and operates in the realm of separation.
Right.
I need my food and my money and my shelter to keep my body, keep this body alive, so my soul can have an earthly, physical, material experience. And yet the soul spirit is coming in from the world of the collective consciousness and unity consciousness and oneness with all that is. In Lakesh, I am another you. There is no separation. We are all one. So again, what you're saying is, yes, here we are dealing with, yes, we are all separate, and yes, we are all one.
So sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think that this whole process, of moving into the future is going to totally depend on each and every person's ability to deal with paradox. It's just like, guess what, man? We're going to just be seeing black is white and white is black, and ego is spirit and spirit is ego, and good is it's just going to be, it's going to get it. Because for me, if you really, you could say it's like the breakdown between the third and the fourth dimension. It's almost like this inner penetration, okay, of this soul spiritual unity consciousness that really wants to kind of like penetrate more fully, deeply, wholly, and completely into this time-space dimension.
Right. So this time-space dimension understands it as opposites, but the higher octave of opposites is paradox. Right?
Beautiful, man. Yeah.
So
the higher octave of opposites is paradox. That's great, Randall.
Well, that's where I'm operating now, and that's why I have the awesome opportunity to speak with people such as yourself, because I'm interested in bouncing off of those people to create a conversation there. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's why, I don't really care too much about what's going on with politics in the world, and I am aware of it, and I watch it, and it's, for me, it's an interesting story, and I see it's like as above, so below. It represents what's happening on some level, but I'm more curious about the evolutionary level,
mm-hmm.
And I know you understand that, and that's why.
Yeah, baby. I mean, I'm just like you. I tap into it enough just so that I can relate to what people are going through.
Right.
But I do individual chart readings, and that also keeps me in touch with what people are going through.
Well, and you're trying to create a bridge between those two understandings, right? Which is what I'm trying to do by talking to people. You know what I mean? I don't know astrology well enough to do it directly like that, but I would like to bring it out of you and make it a conversation so that people who are watching it will see that, well, hey, it's like in a way, what I appreciate about astrology is that, and where I see it's limited. I like what I appreciate about it is that it shows diversity, that there's no single opposite. There's no right and wrong. There's variations there's structure of 12 and variations of those 12, but there's diversity. It's diversity within a structure. So there's no judgment. You can be a scorpionic person that's like this, and you can be the opposite of that, and neither is right or wrong. They both have their path to enlightenment and awareness.
Well, you also said it about where astrology is limited. I want to hear about that.
Oh, limited. Where it's limited, from my point of view, is that, like everything that's a structure, it leans more towards order. And to balance that with the paradox of chaos, sometimes order is very seductive. So people who I know are into astrology will say, oh, Uranus is up there. It's doing this to me. It's doing this to me. Where for me, it's just a reflection of what's going on, as opposed to doing it. But you could also look at it like it's just an onion, layer of the onion that you can see. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you're saying. It's synchronicity. It's as above, so below. It's a mirror. It's not a cause and effect. And I'm sorry to see so many people take it and reduce it to this kind of cause and effect, like this planet in Mercury retrograde, made my car break down kind of thing. Is like, it's not really doing justice or whatever, to what I see as a mystical, you know, expression of life.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, astrology itself is it's very Aquarian, it's very Uranian, it's very order. I mean, you get into exact, aspects and orbs and timings and oh my God, it's like seconds matter and it gets very, 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 very precise.
Right.
And that is very masculine.
Right. And what I wanted to say is another limitation, which I want to ask you about, because maybe you know something I don't, which I'm sure you do, is that would you say that we have a few lineages working within us? And let me say what I mean by that. We have a physical body and a genetic memory, and a familial memory that goes back from the beginning of physical time, right? We can trace our pathway right to the beginning of matter, right? Because we come from something that comes from something, and there's a memory in all of that, right? That goes way back to the beginning.
Right.
There's, as far as I understand it, that's one lineage of our awareness. Another lineage of our awareness is our we can say it's our archetypical body, or maybe our astral body, or our energy body, that is not related to the parents at all. It's not related to the physical body, but it has a memory as well, and it has evolved over the course of as long as energy has been around as well. And we carry that memory as well. Do you agree that there are at least those two aspects within every human being?
For sure.
Okay, so does astrology account for that energy lineage, or is it all the earthly shared experience of being a physical form?
No, I mean, most astrologers, I believe, and certainly myself, is just like in this place of that, the astral, the soul spirit, okay, chooses the time, date, place, genetic structure, religion, culture, family, financial, color of skin, gender of body. This is a choice according to the evolutionary needs of that soul. Now, very often, families will incarnate together over a series of lifetimes. So very often, I would say that your earthly, genetic, physical heritage is very wound in with and mirroring or complementing, okay, that evolutionary intention. But there will also be lifetimes where, oh boy, I have just evolved out of this family stream. I have just, we've been together for 100 lifetimes, and guess what, man? I'm ready to like blow this pop stand. So, then you have a situation where, yeah, boom, I'm hopping over to a whole nother gender and family stream and condition like that. But that's my view, is that, and that's why the birth chart is so profound, because it places an extreme importance on that first breath, prana, spirit, astral, entering the physical and giving life, independent life, to this physical organism. And very often they cut the cord very close by, but it is really the first breath, okay, of the spirit entering the body. Even though some will say that, well, the soul kind of comes in during pregnancy or during, mom feels this, that, or the other thing. But, yes, there is all this preparation, but the birth chart is really drawn for, that moment. And that moment is the uniting of the spirit with the physical, like you were saying.
Awesome. So can I ask you just a couple of personal questions?
This is great, man. I don't get to talk about this, with very many people, so I really appreciate our conversation.
Awesome. Me too. Can I ask you a couple of personal questions? Because for me, that, like I say, the greatest part of this is that I get to talk to people that are conscious archetypes. So I'm as curious about you as the information that you can reveal. What would you say your goal is? I know that like for you, the purpose is to make the unconscious conscious. I've heard you say that several times. So, do you think, do we need, once you're at the stage of that, you understand that it's to make the unconscious conscious, now possibility comes into our awareness. Religions tell you what they think possibility is. Every philosophy has a possibility as the outskirts of its bubble of possibility, of what's possible. What for you is what's possible? What are you heading your consciousness for?
Truth. I mean, I'm working on so many fronts right now. For me, there is this whole, like we were speaking of, the fourth dimension entering the third dimension. Okay, no boundaries. We're all one into a place of boundaries. Okay, well, I like to be, it's not either or, it's both and more. It's been one of my mottos for a while. And now I'm really needing to review that, you know, because I am in a physical body. Okay, I do have intimate relationships. You know, there are other people's hearts involved and lives involved, and you know, there's just like, you know, and then life throws at me, some money and some fame and some, you know, other kinds of, you know, and now I'm this persona, and it's just like, so, you know, for me to like hold my truth without caving, without, you know, because there's this other part of me that wants to please everybody, that wants to say, you know, it's just like, I'm a big yes, 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 yes. And, you know, now I'm coming into this place where I have to have some boundaries. I have to learn how to say no. I have to, you know, like really, and that is pressuring me to become more clear about my ethics, about my morals, about my beliefs, about my, whereas before I felt I was much more fluid, much more innocent, much more whatever, anything goes, you know. It's like, wow, man, this Saturn in Capricorn is, you know, really, like I have to stand for something, and I have to, you know, like really walk my talk, and, you know, so it's a very complex answer to you know, to your question. I don't know if I really did answer it, but you know, you know, the path I'm walking is really this truth begins by being true to myself and being honest with myself about what I want, and stripping away, you know, the illusions, the stories, the justifications, the whatever, and really being brutally honest with myself. Okay, what is it that and so you're asking me this question, you know, this is exactly what I'm pondering, you know, exactly what is it that I want? And I know that I've been, you know, guided before and led before, and I felt like I wanted to be a channel and do what Spirit wanted, but Spirit's like giving me more and more, like, guess what? You're supposed to create your own reality. And so if I'm given more power and more opportunity to create myself and to create my reality, it's also making me, you know, that like I need to be even way more conscious. Right. Instead of being a channel and just like being, you know, led from some blah, 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 blah. It's like to take responsibility for what I'm saying and doing, and that's putting it in a whole nother ballpark, man.
Well, it's funny because what you're explaining is just that how infinity, consciousness is infinite, and you're having to deal with the more of a sense of infinite possibility with trying to make sense of it all and contract it at the same time. It's that paradox you were talking about earlier, trying to reconcile that ultimate paradox. You're living it, right? Yeah. One of the people that I've interviewed who has affected me a lot and it, has broadened my understanding in many ways is that he's a master dreamer. He's spent as many years as you've spent studying astrology, or someone has spent doing something. He's spent in his astral body, if you want to call it. He calls it dreaming. He's along the lines of Cross Castaneda. But he's gotten to the point of his energy, of understanding energy, to understand that there are three attentions that we have: a third, second, and first attention. The first attention is this attention. The second attention we access through dreaming. You might call it the energy body, astral body. And the third attention is actually what projects all of that. And at that level, he calls it a petal. It's shaped like a petal, and it has a ball with, and it has no gender. Gender is only a projection of that petal. What he's pushing, because it seems like what I'm finding is that, like you were saying earlier, it's a time for people to reveal their knowledge that has been hidden for millennia, or that is being transmitted through them at this point in time. Knowledge that everybody that has been more covert in the past is feeling compelled to share. And for him, he's really promoting that people become in touch with the third attention of themselves, the petal part, the part that projects all of this. Mm-hmm. And that the potential for that, in other words, in his world, possibility extends to the point where death or time is not relevant anymore, and that the veil between these levels of density, as he calls them, where you're calling the fourth and third dimension, he calls them levels of density. That's how he's experienced them, and that the veil between them all are as thin as they've ever been, because mostly because of what you've said. I think we're in the galactic center. That there's something happening right now that is pushing all this energy and allowing more possibility for all of us. So what he's saying is that there's a possibility now of us becoming more aware of that level of attention. And how I'm understanding it is that if people understand what is possible, if they limit their possibilities to this, they won't ever see what else there is. I don't know what I'm trying to get at here. I won't even probably publish this because this is too rambly for me. But I'm sharing it with you because...
Well, I mean, I think it's a perfect expression of why I do Kundalini Yoga.
Right, exactly.
You're talking about opening the third eye. You're talking about moving into the witness, into the observer, where there's infinite potential and infinite possibility.
Right. And there, in other words, the moment of physical death is not the end of our individual consciousness. In other words, that hero's journey of the 1 through the 12 signs does not need to continue past the 8th house of physical death. It's just transformation of consciousness. And that's why I was kind of asking you what your goal is. I was curious if your conscious goal was I mean, I understand in day to day we have to deal with the conflict and the paradox of and the opposition of daily life. But in your cosmic goal, do you see yourself as maintaining your awareness to continue?
I'll tell you that it was probably 30 years ago that I set my goal as that I want to die consciously.
Right.
If such a thing is doggone possible, man, I want to go through that threshold. I want to cross that threshold, of the passing away of my physical body in a conscious state of awareness, right? It sounds a little hokey.
Not to me, but for him, that is a real possibility. That's what he does. And that there's a new levels of creativity on the other side of that. Right? In other words, everything that we see here can be elevated to levels that we just can't comprehend. But like we're talking about opposites being a lower octave of paradox, the same thing is true with that possibility. So it just seems to me that possibility, that the bubble of what's possible with consciousness is growing right now.
In very many ways, you can see life as a servant of death. Because I really feel that, we have opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to die and die and die and die before we actually physically leave our bodies. And this is the Scorpio, this is the hero's journey, this is the shamanic journey, this is this, all about this ability, because, I forget the author, but they talked about, I think it was Tom Kenyon, how when you die, there's, it's very interesting because you go into, there is this point of the void, and it is an absolute void. And after that, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did a lot of this after you die experiences, but this tunnel of light appears. Okay, and the Christians see Christ, and the Muslims see Muhammad, and the Jews see Yahweh, and it's just like, and this tunnel opens, and then you move through this tunnel of light, and there's all this blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, before that tunnel of light, there is the void. And he says that the longer you can stay in that void, the longer you can remain in absolute emptiness, the field of choices for your future incarnations, the potential possibilities for your soul future exponentially expand, so that you may not go down some tunnel towards this or that, or some previous belief that you project into the future. You stay in emptiness, and you are far more unlimited. And so, I mean, if probably the ultimate goal for me, is to, be in this place of freedom, which is in this place of practicing letting go.
That's the practice of Kundalini, right? It's training for that moment, right?
It is in the emptiness, in the stillness, in the void. It's, sitting there, outside of time, outside of ego, outside of desire. And, it just like, it gives you another perspective. Let's put it that way.
And in a way, I don't know how much more time you got. I don't want to keep you too long, but in a way, I think that that a lot of people are projecting the idea of a collective of individuals. And I wonder if that collective of individuals can only be accomplished at that level of awareness. That we see it as being here, where all of a sudden the world's going to change. The earth is going to change, but maybe the earth transforms when we transform, and it's not even a different thing. Do you know what I mean by that? That it's not here on earth with palm trees, and it's what you're talking about. It's that holding space in the void as a collective. Do you know what I mean?
I love it. I love it. What it brings up for me is the tipping point. And I know that there's that old saying in the Bible or something, it only takes 144,000. I mean, I do feel like, yes, it's not a matter of numbers. It's not a matter of, physical quantities or measured, head count, but there is just I would say that, as you, as an individual moves more into that third, level of awareness, that there can be a gathering there.
Right.
and that when energy gathers around a hub or a nucleus or becomes a new center, there can be what would be perceived as a radical shift in altering reality in the third dimension as a result of this expanded consciousness.
Well, there's another fellow that I've been interviewing that is exactly pointed that the information he's getting is pointing at that. And it actually is 144,000, strange enough, because the 12 is an important number, not only in astrology, but it's important in variations of the 12. So I don't know. I don't get that. That's not transmitted to me, but when I hear things and it resonates with me, I just kind of, it attracts me. I can't verify it, but I mean, it's interesting that because I'm searching for these people. I'm being exposed to all these different people that seem to be transmitting all this information from spirit, or whatever you want to call it, and with like you say, almost a Saturnian structure, a structure to it. It's not just vague, stuff. It's something with a structure and of possibility. I mean, that paradox of infinite possibility within a structure. That paradox seems to be very much materialized as an idea here now. It's an exciting time.
I love it. It is super exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's intense, but I find intensity exciting.
I do now. When I was younger, I would crumble from it, and that's how I learned to expand from it. Because for myself, I have a Saturn exactly conjunct my moon in the 4th house of Aquarius. Whatever. But what I'm saying is that for me, from day one, my earliest memory is of what a scary place this is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've been going from that point to try and figure out how do I free myself from all this burden and all this pain and all this whatever. I don't know why I'm talking.
Well, you're doing it.
Well, I'm
old world. I mean, fantastic, brother.
And you too, right? To me, why I want to talk with you is because to me it makes a connection. If not in the physical realm, I mean, for this few moments, in the ethereal realm, the connection is made.
Yeah.
That's how I understand what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm honored to make that connection with you. And
I'm very appreciative. I'm so glad you contacted me. I feel, humbly grateful for our conversation and connection.
Me too, very much. Thank you. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, and I hope that this continues.
Thank you.